tell us a little bit about your background as a motorcyclist and as a writer.
Well, I suppose I was intrigued growing up by motorcycles. Obviously, I think because I was bullied as a small child, and I grew up on Easy Rider magazines, and I desperately wanted to join an outlaw club, even at the age of like 13, 14. So I grew up reading Easy Riders, and Easy Riders was actually a beautifully written magazine. There was some very, very clever stuff in that back in the day when magazines were a thing. But I from that I sort of kind of like began to love all motorcycles. I was sticking up pictures on my wall at home, and my parents were suffering greatly because they thought, oh my God, he's not my son. He's going to buy a motorcycle. He's going to die. Finish. And my father said, if you bring a motorcycle home, I will cut it in half with an axe. Finished. Well, challenge. I'm going to fucking bring a motorcycle home. That's what's going to happen. So at the age of, in Australia, you get your license at 16 and 9 months. So at 16 and 9 months and 1 day, I had a motorcycle and I brought it home, and he didn't cut it into with an axe. So yeah, once that sort of that drug gets into your veins, that's it. I don't have any other interests. I don't have any other hobbies. I ride motorcycles. I only go to the gym so that I can ride motorcycles longer, for as long as I can, So yeah,
I noticed from your post you seem to be riding like all the time.
Yeah, I've been reviewing motorcycles now for probably 20 years. In Australia, I enjoy a great deal of support from the industry, who supplies me with endless motorcycles to review and to ride, and because I actually ride them, I used to do about 120,000 kilometres a year. That's sort of dropped down a bit. I'm probably still doing about 80,000 kilometres a year on the road. I do a little bit of dirt riding, not a lot, but enough to sort of kind of stay, keep the skill set there. But I'm not great on dirt, but I try to stay alive, and that's the main thing. But the whole writing gig, I also wanted to get a job where I got to ride motorcycles. So there are only two possibilities in Australia: you either become a postman or a police officer. Now, I'm not philosophically disposed to be a police officer. I don't have that in me. So I thought, well, they're going to pay me money to ride a motorcycle and deliver mail. I'm at the post office. So that was like the first important job that I got. My mother was over the moon. Oh, beautiful government job is set for life, So I did that for a few years. That was a lot of fun. Kept riding. Did the whole outlaw club thing, which was a lifestyle of enormous highs and enormous lows. And if you're 25, being in an outlaw club is like the greatest sort of boys' own adventure you could possibly ever have, And during my time at the post office, I thought, I was reading one of those, like we had a magazine in Australia called Ozbike, which was an outlaw motorcycle magazine, and I wrote them a letter. I don't even remember what it was about, but I think it was just a stream of consciousness thing. And they published a letter. And I went, oh, fuck, look, my word's in print. How good is that? So I wrote them another letter, and they published that. And I wrote them 2 or 3 more letters. And the editor and owner of the magazine at the time, a guy called Bob Skull, of course it was called Bob Skull, right? He says to me, he goes, he contacted me, and he said, we'd like to offer you a job. I said, well, fucking doing what? He said, as a cadet journalist. And I said, okay, what does that pay? He said, it doesn't pay anything. You need to go on the dole, and I'll pay you $20 a week on top of the dole. So I kicked in a really well-paying job at the post office to go and work for this magazine. My mother, straight to church, on her knees in front of Jesus, going, oh, my God, my son is lost to me. That's it. She's praying and crossing herself and, candles and all that shit. You got to do what you got to do. So, and it kind of all went from there. I've since spent, I'm 62 now. I've been doing this writing stuff since I was in my early 20s. So, I was once the editor of Australia's largest selling men's magazine, which was The Picture. I worked for most of the motorcycle magazines in the country, had a few of my own. And then it all went, I wrote a few books. I've written 4 books. So I basically was made redundant because magazines kind of died. And I was made redundant and I had nothing to do. And I don't have any other skills. I just write. So my wife and I moved out of Sydney to a rural area, about 200 k's out of Sydney. And I sit here in front of my computer and I write all day. I ride motorcycles and tell people how much I enjoyed riding motorcycles.
What was the year or the years where the online thing just really put the final nail in the coffin for the print publications?
It was probably the very late 90s, 98, 99. And I remember, the magazine that I was working on then was Tits and Bums, like there was half-naked girls. It was very funny. It was a very hugely popular magazine. It was selling about 170,000 a week, which is huge in Australia, given our population. And I remember going into my publisher's office and I said to him, I think we should do something about the internet, like a website or something. And he said, get out of my office, we do magazines. That internet thing is never going to work, ever. The internet is bullshit. You can't make money on it. And here we are today.
I would have thought it was like 10 years later than that. I didn't realize it was so early.
Oh, it was a gradual decline. Yeah, it was a gradual decline.
Because the American magazines hung on for quite some time, but I'd say 7 or 8 years ago, they basically completely just disappeared. Yep. They're not. I don't even know where you can buy one now. eBay.
Look, we used to have 16 motorcycle magazines in this country. Probably 18, I think. We now have 3, and they're all rubbish. They're just rubbish. 2 of them are written by AI. They're just like a sausage factory. They're just garbage. The industry doesn't even support them anymore. If they sell, they'd be lucky to sell 1,000 copies a month, if that.
Really?
I get more people. I've got 12,000 followers on my socials. I have more people following me than read motorcycle magazines.
But have any of the print magazines not been able to make a successful transition to an online website?
No, not one.
What do you think that is? Because it seems like some of the British ones have been able to do okay.
I think what happened in Australia was really unique in terms of publishing. What we had here was a whole bunch of enthusiasts who were doing motorcycle magazines, but who weren't professional writers. And they would hire people who were friends or relatives or something like just because they liked to feed off the industry, because they used to love going to bike launches or getting free jackets or free helmets. And it was all about what they could get out of the industry. And the industry had nowhere else to go. It was, like a closed shop. We have to advertise in the magazines. We have to give these dickheads jackets and bikes and helmets and gloves. And when that all started to fall apart, in the industry, as you probably well realised, could very much market itself on social media, these guys have gone, but what about us? We're entitled. No, you're shit. You write garbage. It's just awful what they produce. Awful. And the industry can see this now. And
what was the biggest print magazine before the collapse? General Motorcycle.
General Motorcycle, it would have been, they sold, it was Two Wheels and Australian Motorcycle News, but they still sold less, half of what the biker magazine sold. Like Ausbike was selling 50,000 a month. And Australian Motorcycle News, which said it was the biggest, was selling 15,000 a fortnight. So it was a fortnightly magazine. So 30,000 a month. The biker culture, the outlaw culture, was very, very strong here. And as you know, motorcyclists in the last probably 15 years have tribalised. There's adventure riders, there's outlaws, there's the guys who just ride to coffee shops, there's tourers, there's, it's all tribalised, and everyone now is on social media. That's pretty much it. So we never had, we were the biggest consumer of magazines per capita in the world, Australia. We had women's magazines were huge here, huge. But that's all changed. Now everyone, it's this thing, and that's where we all are.
And your family immigrated to Australia from Serbia.
Yeah. Long story short, Dad was an officer in the Serbian Royal Army for King Peter, and Mum and her family. My actual grandfather on my maternal side is just outside of Kiev when it was Russia, and they ran away from the revolution, and he died on the way to Europe because they were running from the communists. And Mum and her grandmother and her sister settled in a town called Bela Crkva, which is on the border of Romania and Serbia. And there was a huge Russian expat community. So Mum's Russian, essentially.
But from the area of Kiev?
Just not far from Kiev. There's the town's name escapes me now, but it's a bit east of Kiev. Chernihiv. She's from Chernihiv. Her grandfather was from Chernihiv.
Yeah, right on the border with Belarus.
Yeah, and interestingly, she met another gentleman in Bela Crkva, which was in Serbia or Yugoslavia back then, and he ended up becoming the metropolitan of the Russian Orthodox Church in exile in New York. So that was my paternal grandfather, my maternal grandfather.
Yeah,
but anyway, Sorry?
I said I didn't realize your Ukrainian connection until today. All the time we've been talking, I always knew the Serbia thing. This is the first time you told me about the Ukrainian connection.
Well, yeah. Well, it was they call themselves Russia. It's like saying you're American.
Well, it's like you're from the Midwestern. You're American. You're Ukrainian. You're Russian. But it's just hard.
The word Ukraina means edge of.
Yeah, the border.
The edge of what? Russia. It's the edge of Russia. It's not. It's never been a country. It was never a country. And it's not now.
Well, the edge of Russia, or the edge of the Austrian-Hungary Empire, or the edge of Poland, or the edge of Lithuania, or the edge of the Viking Swedish Empire.
Well, yeah, sure,
but the edge of a lot of things.
Yeah, sure, but
I think that's why they named it the border area, because it was consistently always that. That was the one thing that counted.
Absolutely, but as you probably know, and Denis will agree with me, there is no the in Russian. So Ukraina means the edge of. So it's the Ukraine. It's not Ukraine. It's the Ukraine. That's
Americans used to say the Ukraine until 1991. I mean, when I growing up, it was always the Ukraine. You said
the Ukraine. That's exactly what it is.
That's only a recent thing that we've now changed. Take the off of it. But if you hear some older people on TV being interviewed, they still slip up. Because it's not politically correct now to say the Ukraine, but you'll hear them say the Ukraine. But because the Beatles song back in the USSR, they don't say Ukraine girls really knocked me out. They say the Ukraine.
The
girls.
Ukraine girls. Yeah. That's what it is. So I'm a bit of a Mongol, but I'm essentially. I grew up in the Russian community and the Serbian community, speaking both languages. So Dad spoke Serbian in the house, Mum spoke Russian. And my aunt, who grew up in Austria, spoke German, so I know enough German to get into trouble as well. So that's basically me in a nutshell.
Does Serbia use the same Cyrillic alphabet as Russian, or is it different?
It's slightly different. It's the same, but slightly different, a variation on a theme. I think they have 2 or 3 less letters.
How different is Serbia from a language from Russian?
A little bit, not much. It's more. It's almost dialect, like a dialect of Russian. It's a Slavic language. So if you say in Russian the word for bread in Russian is chleb, the word for bread in Serbian is chleb. So it's just the pronunciation. Some words are completely different because they're separated by 2 or 3 kilometers.
Just like English to UK to Australia, some words are completely different.
A little bit, but Serbian history is very different to Russian history. They spent 400 years being vassals of the Turks. So a lot of Turkish words have crept into the Serbian language. The word for enemy in Turkish is dushman. The word for enemy in Serbian is dushman. In Russian, it's protivnik. It's a completely different word. You know what I mean? there are similarities. Can a Russian understand a Serb? Yeah, more or less.
So of the countries of the former Yugoslavia, how many of those countries used the Cyrillic alphabet? Did all of them use
only
it?
Serbia.
Only Serbia.
See, yeah, in Yugoslavia there are 3 dialects, and it's all a variation. They call it Serbo-Croat, but there's 3 dialects: Erkavian, Kakavian, and Chekavian. They're the 3 dialects. So Bosnia is like the Ukraine. It was never a country. It was just a region. It's a microcosm of Yugoslavia. So Muslims lived there. Well, Muslims were essentially urbanized Serbs who lived in the cities, in the larger towns. And the Orthodox Serbs were all hugely agrarian societies. They lived in the villages. Like most Eastern European countries, the villages supplied the towns with food and manpower and stuff like that. They fed the towns. That's still much the case today in Serbia. We have cities, Belgrade and Novi Sad and places like that. But the villages still feed the larger towns. So yeah, the Croats were also never a country until very recently. Again, they're a throwback to the Austro-Hungarian Empire. That's their Catholicism, and it's very difficult for Westerners to understand. Oh, it's all complicated. It all goes back. Why can't they just get on? Because we can't just fucking get on. That's just how it is. But we're neighbours. We do get on. It's like Russians and Ukrainians would get on if the West would fuck off and leave them alone. Stop interfering, and we'll sort it out. Ultimately, I mean, the only people who benefit from the horror that's going on in Ukraine is the West. Slav killing Slav, Ivan killing Ivan.
Well, I would argue that the West does not benefit. Individual people and companies benefit, but I think the Western economies and the general public are severely going to be hurt by this. If you have stock in defense contractors, if you're certain politicians, you're doing quite well. Yeah. But if you're the average American or European, you're looking at the price of goods and all the other things that are the backlash and boomerang of this war. It's not strengthening the U.S., Canada, Australia, or Europe. Not the average person, for sure.
Look, Australia essentially doesn't manufacture anything. We're a giant mining pit for the rest of the world. That's what we do. We produce raw materials, iron ore, coal, and we export a lot of meat, sheep, cows. But we don't actually produce anything. We used to have a car industry. We don't have a car industry. We don't make anything. America still produces things, England still produces vehicles. They still we don't have a manufacturing industry. Not a lot, but certainly more than what we do.
Well, what were those Australian, the Ford brand that was made in Australia only?
The Ford Falcons.
Or maybe it was a GM. But there was an American company.
Holden's.
Yeah.
Holden's, yeah. General Motors, yeah.
Yeah, so they shut that down. It's gone now.
Totally. We used to have Toyota. Toyota was manufacturing here. Leyland was manufacturing here. General Motors under the Holden brand, and Ford. Nothing. We now import. Australians have lost their minds. We're starting to import Dodge Rams and giant Chevy Silverados.
Why did they do that? Why did they close all their manufacturing?
Because we weren't competitive, right? Australia has very high wages. Our wages are quite high by comparison to, say, America. But consequently, everything is more expensive here as well. Our petrol is now about $2.30 a litre.
Well, your taxes overall are much higher than the U.S.
Yeah. I said 48% at the high threshold, so half your money goes to the government.
Yeah,
43%.
That's why for such a small country, you can afford to send so much money to Ukraine.
That's exactly correct.
Interesting. I didn't realize. I knew Australia was huge in mining. I didn't realize that all the car companies. Because I knew the Holdens. Because when I went there, I was asked, "What kind of car is this?" They said, "It's America." I said, "I never heard of this." And then I did some research and saw that it was a General Motors car, but that brand only existed like in Australia, nowhere else.
In the last 2 years of Holden, we began importing Opels from Germany and badging them as Holden Commodores, but they were made in Germany. That's how we
But
work.
at least
We know
those
how
are
to-
good General Motors cars as compared to the things we have here. So the Opals.
Look, we completely lost. The vehicles we were producing simply were not competitive on the world market. They were poorly made. They just simply could not compete, especially with the rise of Korea. The Korean cars now are every bit as good as anything made anywhere else in the world. And China's coming as well. China's going to produce some amazing vehicles in the next 10 years. And that's where we're all going to be,
Not if Victoria Newland can do anything about it.
Go Cookies Newland, yeah.
All right, I'll let Dennis talk a little. Wait, I have one question.
Yeah.
Where in the world did Australia come up with 16 and 9 months? Is that 16 you get pregnant and 9 months to have the baby? What is that? Why isn't it 16 or 17? What is 16 and 9 months?
I honestly don't even know the answer to that question. I wish I did. Suddenly you get to 16, 9 months, and you've reached an age of maturity where you can now operate a motorcycle.
How old to drive a car?
Same 16 and 9 months.
So strange.
But what was really weird is back then you could buy any capacity motorcycle you wanted. So when I was 16 and 9 months, I went and bought an 1100cc Suzuki, not a 250. Yeah. I'm fucking buying the biggest motorcycle I can get, and if I die, I die. So that was the
well, that's the way it is in the U.S. even today. But I know Europe, it's all restricted by horsepower and everything else.
Yeah.
All right,
but I'm actually fascinated to speak to Denis. I think it's a pleasure to have a chat with him because I don't often get a chance to speak to Russian motorcyclists.
Yeah,
there's a lot of them. When I first started when I went to Russia 20 years ago, there was like no motorcycles. I would be in Moscow for a week and see maybe 2 bikes the whole time. I would go to the International Russian Motorcycle Show, and it was about twice as big as my office, and there's like 200 people there. And now there's like an infinite amount of brands of motorcycles there. There's who knows? I don't even know how many Russian motorcycles there are, but it has grown in 20 years into a huge sport. So anyway, feel free, you two, go at it.
Yeah.
Denis, tell me, how old are you for a start?
I'm 31.
31. So how did you get into this? I mean, I understand Russia doesn't have the same motorcycle culture that the West does. How did this come about? Tell me how you decided you're going to ride motorcycles. And
I don't know how it happened. It's like a destiny, So I received some DVD movies, like American movies about the stunt riding. I remember it calls Urban Street Bike Freestyle. And it was produced by some US stunt riding team. And I was maybe 12 years old and just turned on that movie, and I was really impressed. I was really shocked. So I couldn't understand that it's possible, it's real, and I just realized that it's just for me. So that movie, that kind of activity, it's mine. So I will try that style of riding. And I remember the really first movie. It calls Biker Boys. Do you know that movie?
Yeah, I know the film.
Yeah, so at the same age, I saw that movie and I said, "Oh, those guys are really cool. I wanted to be like those guys sometime." So I just went directly to the stunt riding, and all my motorcycles were only for stunt riding. So even when I received a new bike from my sponsorship contract, like first day I received this new bike for riding. And the second day, I will cut the frame and to do some custom adjustments just to start to cut the new frame, something like that. So I wasn't focused on some street riding. I just know that motorcycle for me, it's for stunts, for my career, and so on and so forth. So hopefully my parents supported me with that kind of hobby. So they didn't block me, and they just said, okay, if you wanna go forward, try to find some opportunities to yourself, because like we have no opportunities. Let's go. If you wanna, just try to find something and so on. And they really helped me with the first scooter. My age was around 15 or something like that. Yeah, 15. And I started to write. I started to practice some skills every day. I watched the US movies, and I received a lot of inspiration from US riders, how they did it, and I really felt in love. And
but did you were your friends riding as well? Because I learned from myself. No, that's the thing. When you start riding motorcycles and your friends don't ride motorcycles, you don't have those friends anymore. You know,
I found new friends.
You find new friends.
Yeah, it wasn't a problem. So I found the friends who were riding motorcycles with me. And my really first year when I started to do stunts, like a first step as a professional rider, it was 2010. And I received a contract. I received a manager who helped me to promote myself, to make like commercial offers, and who explained me how marketing is working. And I realized that to be like a professional, it's not only about your riding skills. It's about how you can promote yourself and how you can connect the value of the brand with their like target group. And I realized, and I really I received the second passion. It's a marketing. So the first one, it was riding, and the second one, it was marketing. I really started to focus on how I can connect the stunt riding, because it's really bright activity, how I can connect like stunt riding with the marketing and with all companies' needs. And 2010, it was like a real start. We started to do some movie. Do you remember our first movie when I was riding motorcycle at night, during the night? Yeah, so we made a team. We started to make some videos, started to think how we can promote it on YouTube or a different. So we have our own social network in Russia. It calls VK, and we did a really great job to promote ourselves and VK. And the company started to ask me so what is the process? Can you share us with the process of how do you promote yourself according to the videos, according to some photo shoots? How do you push the products? And we started to share the information with the different brands. We started to do some collaborations and grabbing more and more and more attention with different type of local companies and like international companies. And in 2011, so we received a big contract with a big local company there. It's a motorcycle store, the biggest motorcycle store in my hometown. And it's not.
Sorry, which is your hometown?
Kaliningrad.
Kaliningrad, okay.
Yeah, it's very close to Europe. I had the chance always to ride in Europe, and I did more shows and competitions in Europe, not in Russia. So for me, it was really. It was easier to get to Poland or to Germany or to different like European countries. I had been in Serbia, by the way, a couple times, in Belgrade.
I'll just interrupt you briefly. My first experience with Russian and Eastern European stunt riders was about 6 years ago. We had some stunt riders here, and they were all right at first, but they kept doing the same thing over and over again. Wheelie, high chair wheelie, and it was the same. And then I started to get videos, and it was probably you and some other guys that I'd seen doing some stuff in Russia and in Eastern Europe. And I thought, look at this. This is fucking crazy. These guys are completely on another level. And I started sending these videos to the Australian stunt riders I know. I said, why can't you bitches do this? You're doing boring shit all the time. I've seen the same fucking show now 6 times. Do something else.
Boris,
we can't do that.
I've seen, to me, the actual stunts on the motorcycles is not what is so interesting. The things that I've seen Denis do that are interesting is the locations. And two stand out more than anything. One is when they found an abandoned high-rise building in the middle of Kaliningrad, and the building was abandoned, so the elevator didn't work. And what kind of bike was it?
Kawasaki 636.
Kawasaki 636, and they carried it up like 50 flights of stairs to the top of the roof, which had no walls on it, and he wheeled it around the perimeter, and you're looking down, and people, because I have reasonable acrophobia. I mean, I'm not afraid of heights if I can't fall, but there's no way I'm walking like to the edge of something that is certain death if you fall up. He's riding this motorcycle around, wheeling right on the edge, and you're looking down, and the cars are just like little ants. That one, and another time he went to like I don't know if it was working or abandoned, but it was like a hydroelectric dam. Have you ever seen a picture of like the Hoover Dam in the United States? And he's wheeling and doing stoppies, and it's like 5,000 meters straight down into like some green water that's been sitting there since Joseph Stalin's time. And you're thinking, you fall, that's an unsurvived. There's it's not even a 1 in a million chance. It's 100% death if you have an accident. So
that's the stunt. You see, that's what I mean. That's the thrill of it. That's stunt riders are to me they look at motorcycling through a different lens. None of us started riding motorcycles because it was safe, right? No one does this because it's not safe. We manage risk rather than take risk. But stunt riders, they take that to another level. Watch this. I never even knew you could do this shit on a motorcycle. To me, do a burnout, do a wheelie, yay, fucking stunt, lots of girls, right? That's not the case anymore. Now it's very, very different. I'm absolutely respect and awe for what you guys do. Amazing.
Thanks. So we were looking for cool locations and started to do something inspirable, because I have never had the goal like to be the first rider in the world. So it was not for me. So I just wanted to get as much experience as I can between connection like stunt riding and marketing. So I always was looking for different ideas how I can collaborate marketing and the stunt riding. So if you are working with different shows, so I always looking for opportunities to collaborate between the marketing and some riding skill, because we had a sponsor. We discussed it today with Michael. We had a sponsors like Subaru, and it's a completely interesting story. It's a completely opposite side of the stunt riding, because like 20 years ago, as for stunt riders and the level of stunt riding in Russia, so the company they didn't understand how they can collaborate with the stunt riders, because, for example, the company who produced the cars, how they can collaborate with the motorcycle business.
Yeah.
And we started to make it general, because we grabbed people's attention, right? And we had an audience, and audience follow us, and we started to work to get understanding. So what target group do we have? And can we share our target group with different brands and so on? So we started to make a bridge between our audience and the brands, and it was a really nice story.
It's amazing how quickly Russia adopted and began to understood marketing, which we've been doing in the West forever. It's all about marketing here, and it has been for a long, long time. But it's like so many things. The Russians see something and they go, well, we can do better at this, and off they go. Subaru wouldn't even look at us here. It's motorcycling, right? There's nothing to do with us. They don't seem to get it. Whereas, I don't know, the Russian companies seem to be more open to different ideas, to different concepts.
Boris is even worse than that. In the U.S. and in Australia, Honda Cars doesn't want anything to do with Honda motorcycles.
Yeah, same here. Exactly correct. They're two separate divisions, It's crazy. It's like, but I think also, and in America, it may not be, I don't know how correct it is in America, but in Australia, motorcyclists are looked at as criminals they call them temporary Australians or hood ornaments. You know, the cars hit them, they end up on the hood. Motorcyclists are not liked in Australia. We're looked down upon. If you go to a pub or a restaurant and you're dressed in bike gear, people kind of, you know, you're not.
I think that's the same, and there's a certain segment of the public that's like that in all countries, especially in Western.
I didn't find that in Europe.
It depends where. It depends.
I suppose that's true.
If you're in the snooty, you're in the snooty. Yeah, you know, I spent my whole life working with Italian motorcycle companies, and you know, talking about marketing and everything. What the public doesn't realize is all the famous Italian brands. If you go to those companies, nobody rides motorcycles.
Yeah.
Okay? You go to the parking lot of any famous Italian brand. There's no motorcycles in the parking lot, and there's no people inside riding motorcycles. At AGV, even at their peak, when they had hundreds of employees, there was one guy that rode a motorcycle, the technical guy, who I became friends with, and we actually rode with here in the United States. But all the famous Italian brands, the people aren't. They don't like motorcycles.
It's interesting you say that because 2 weeks ago, BMW launched one of their, that cruiser motorcycle, the R18. Yeah, it's that cruiser that they have, the big twin, the horizontally opposed twin. It's called the Roctane, the R18. And I got to meet the design engineer. Was a guy called Roland Stoker. And he used to work in the brakes department at BMW, but he is a typical biker. He's got long hair and a beard. He looks like David Grohl or Jesus. He looks a bit like Jesus. And he is a pure biker. He's got an old Harley shovelhead in his garage with a jockey shift and a suicide clutch. And I said, how did this happen? He said, I'm the only biker that works there. And they said, we need someone who understood the motorcycle mentality. And they said, well, ask Roland because he looks like, you know, one of those bikers. Suddenly he's a project manager.
See, to me, it's very different in Australia and the U.S. because if you go to the U.S. and go to any motorcycle business, parts and accessories, whatever, what you were saying about, you know, people don't ride motorcycles because they're safe. Well, people don't get into the motorcycle business in Australia or in the United States because they're trying to be the next Jeff Bezos. There's a lot easier ways to make money. So when you're
everyone has to be a fanatic.
You're an Australian and you're in the motorcycle business, it's because you love motorcycles. But Italians got the motorcycle business because their families were in the manufacturing business. It's like a father-son hand-me-down craftsmanship. And most of them that I met in my entire career never rode a motorcycle, had no interest in motorcycles. It was they could have been making any skiing stuff or it doesn't matter. Just like the Chinese, it's a manufacturing business that happens to make motorcycle stuff. But
that's why the whole Russian thing fascinates you because Russia doesn't have a culture of motorcycling at all. You know, this is, you know, Denis said this is relatively new. It started in, you know, I mean, I know about the Night Wolves and I know, you know, about the outlaw stuff over there, but there isn't a culture of motorcycling. And then suddenly there is. That astonishes me, and especially at such a high level with stunt riding.
I think the reason is, though, like the Italians that I knew that didn't ride weren't interested in it. I think that the Russians, especially anyone that got to ride the 42,000 Harleys that we sent over during World War II during the Lend-Lease program, I think Russians always had the mentality because they're risk-taking people. It's just the economic reality of communism, the Soviet Union, it didn't lend itself to jet skis and paragliders and motorcycles, recreational toys like that. And as soon as the market blew open and people had a little bit of expendable money, I think they rushed like crazy to buy motorcycles. And it's now, it amazes me how many different brands, because there's so many different Chinese brands and the Russian company in one city will bring them in, slap their own name on them. There's so many. The community is so restricted because you have to pass so many safety regulations. So there's maybe like 10 major brands. But in Russia, practically anyone that can buy 12 motorcycles can have their own motorcycle brand.
Well, that's the thing, I think, and you're right, because I think motorcycling in general would speak to the Russian soul because it is dangerous, it is fun, it is crazy, And that's Russia. That's Slavs. That's what we are like.
It's independent.
Yeah,
and,
totally independent.
And
Yeah, very much so.
Another reason, in the Soviet Union, we had no some educational courses how to drive a motorcycle, and my father told me a lot of stories. So many people died, and so on. So, for example, I compare my father's story and stories of Michael's ride. So the same year, my father rode a motorcycle without any apparel, without helmet, somewhere in the countryside, and I saw the Michael picture this year. He has perfect riding skills riding at the racetrack. So there was a racetrack and all kind of infrastructure, how to ride, where to ride, and so on and so forth. So for me, the first time when I have seen the sport bike, it was 2002, and it was I saw the first sport bike in my life in Russia. Can you imagine? And I was really, really surprised because a couple of years ago I saw a sport bike from US movies, and now I see the real sport bike in 2002 at my backyard, and I saw it was the father of my friend, and I said, "What is it? A spaceship or what is that?" I was really surprised.
The concept of safety, of public safety and personal safety, is so different in any country of the former Soviet Union. I remember the first time I went to Moscow, to me it was more dangerous taking an elevator than riding a motorcycle in the United States. These things would stop halfway between floors and then drop, and I thought, and you'd be walking down the street and there'd be a manhole cover missing because someone stole it for the scrap metal. Yeah. And people, no one's stopping to call the police or put a sign up or anything. They're just walking around it, and you look down, it's 3 stories straight down.
Yeah, that's the thing. I think in the West, we have sold our soul to the god of safety. And everything is about keeping us safe from ourselves, from the world, from, I took my son 2 years ago to Europe, and we went to Slovenia and to Lake Bled, which is beautiful. It's got that castle, the lake, and there is no fence around the lake. In Australia, there will be a fucking fence. You can't go near the lake because you might fall in. And my son, who, he's 26, he grew up here, he said, there's no signs saying, do not swim. I said, you can swim if you want. If you die, you die. There's an expectation of you're going to take responsibility for yourself as an adult.
That's a perfect segue. I can make you feel proud as an Australian that you're not an American. So I took Denis wakeboarding the other weekend. I have a Yamaha jet boat. It has two 3-cylinder, 2-stroke motors with 2 different independent jets with throttles for each of them. And I said to him, "You got to see this warning sticker on the back of the back of the boat. This is something especially for America. No other country in the world has warning stickers like this." And he just thinks I'm screwing with him. And I bring him around back, and I read it, and he doesn't even see it. He just listens to what I'm saying. He just starts laughing because he thinks I'm just screwing with him. There's a big orange and black sticker right on the transom of the boat that says, "Do not place your rectum or vagina over the jet nozzles." And I'm thinking, if you put your rectum or vagina over the jet nozzles, you really deserve whatever.
You deserve to die. You deserve, do it. Fucking do it. I think this is why I love motorcycling so much, because the theory of Darwin, the survival of the fittest.
Yeah.
Right? Only the fittest will survive. That's motorcycling. If you're an idiot, you will die very quickly on a motorcycle. It doesn't tolerate stupid people doing dumb shit.
But I told him, I said that sticker is there not because they're trying to keep that from ever happening. It's there because it happened at least one time.
Yes, that's exactly correct. It happened. Someone did it. Someone decided it was a good idea to put that jet nozzle in their bum. Fantastic.
Anyway, I'm sort of in a different position. I do many things that average typical American would consider dangerous or too dangerous. but I'm not like at your level. I do dangerous things, but I always use reasonable safety equipment. I'm not saying I always wear a leather suit when I ride a motorbike in Thailand when it's 90 degrees, but I never ride without a helmet. And I know a lot of people that usually wear a helmet, but sometimes ride without one, or sometimes, like we have a friend that went riding with Denis, and he's got a Honda Interceptor, and he has a nice Arai helmet, but he has a Harley too. And when he rides that, he has a little plastic bucket that wouldn't do anything if you crashed it, just collect your brains in it. I always from 14, because when I started riding when I was in France, and you only had to be 14, not 14 and 9 months, just 14 for a small bike. And I never in my life ever rode a motorcycle without a helmet, and without a full face helmet too. I never wore an open face helmet, let alone a half helmet. So I'm big on reasonable safety equipment, especially for a helmet. But what you're saying is, John, I mean, the Western countries have just been so feminized against anything that's possibly remotely hazardous that I love going to Vietnam and Thailand and to Russia, places like that, just because I just feel way freer, because you're not just bombarded with signs warning you that every single thing you do might kill you or endanger you.
I reckon I could one-up you on the sticker. In Australia, I had this conversation with my nephews in Serbia. We have this law in Australia. It's called the Responsible Service of Alcohol. Okay, the RSA laws. So what that means is that if I'm in a bar or a pub and the bartender decides, for reasons only he can explain, that I've had too much to drink, he will say no more. In Australia, you can't buy a double shot of whiskey or vodka. They won't sell it to you. You have to buy a mixer with it. So I'm trying to explain this to my Serbian nephews, or saying, and they're looking at me, I'm going, what, really? I said, yeah. So my nephew calls over the bartender and he says to him, if I'm really drunk and I say to you, go and get me another drink, what are you going to do? And the bartender shrugs. He goes, I'll go and get you another drink. He said, what if I'm really drunk? He said, I'll be really quick. He said, do you know where my uncle comes from in Australia, people like you can tell people like him that he's had too much to drink. And the bartender's looked at him, he's gone, that I don't believe you. There's no such place on earth. There is. Australia.
It's the Australian version of face control.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I cannot now go to a bar in Sydney and order a double whiskey. They will not sell it to me.
It's interesting.
It's not interesting. It's appalling. And then my nephew said, why aren't you hanging your politicians from telegraph poles? And I couldn't answer that question either. Right? I don't know why we're not.
But we were having this I was having this conversation with Denis last week, because he was talking about a big problem in Bali right now with the foreigners. And and he said the problem is between all the Russians that have come in because of the war, and all the Australians have come in because they're escaping all the restrictions like that, and they come to Bali and go crazy.
Yeah, they want to drink and drive. If someone say me that Russians drink a lot of vodka, I said no, Australian drink a lot of vodka.
I had this discussion with a German, and he said, you know, in Australia, we have a drinking culture in Germany, but in Australia, you have a get pissed culture, right? See, Australians, when they drink, they just drink. Like in Russia, when you drink, you have a zakuska. You put something in your mouth and you drink. Yeah, that's in Serbia is the same. In most civilized countries, that's not in Australia. Beer, fucking fight. That's what we do. We're stupid. We're completely uncivilized. Completely. You know.
And so, well, apparently, so the poor Balinese people are saturated with drunken Russians and Australians now.
Yeah,
well, there you go.
Now we compete with each other who drink more.
No, it's crazy. But tell me, Denis, so your business now, you do a lot of tours around the world as well.
Yeah, we started to do this year. Last year, we started to do like international tours because so many Russian moved all over the world, and I have a lot of friends all over the world. Like they just moved for different countries, and when most people moved to Bali, and we had a school on Bali, and we are making the tours on Bali since 2017. And so we have already base camps there, motorcycles, our own motorcycle park, and so on. But we received the huge wave of immigration, the Russian and Ukrainian and Belarus who moved on Bali. A couple months, and they started to look for some activity. And here we are. We have tours, we have programs, and so on and so forth.
So the tours are on the dirt. So you do a lot of dirt riding or adventure riding?
Yeah, because all kind of islands on Bali or different other islands, they have a great potential for off-road rides. And for example, there are no any rules. If you have some, if you wanted to go up to volcano and see the crater, if you can do this, you can. So you can take the motorcycle, take the local guide, and the local guide show you the lava, he will show you the crater, and so on and so forth. So first of all, our like team of instructors, we go and check and see if it's like crazy track or
how crazy? Just a little bit crazy.
Yeah, the level of crazy, and
the level of crazy.
Yeah, I don't know any country where allow you to go up to volcano by the enduro motorcycle, but there is a volcano on Bali that you can go on the top by enduro. Fair. Yeah, by enduro motorcycle. So for a customer, it's a huge achievements in the life, right? To go up to volcano by motorcycle or something like that. So that's why we started to do some unique tour for people who just we tell it who just lost the taste of life, something like that. Who want just to restart their brain. Because in Russia, we always, if you check the history, the history, we always survive. We always have to survive, find the way how to survive, looking for different business, different opportunities. Today your business is doing good and you receive a lot of profit. Tomorrow it doesn't work anymore. And you always, all the time, you have to think how to survive, not how to live. How to buy a boat, how to put a stupid sticker at your boat. Well, you always have to find a way how to survive. And sometime after 10 or 20 years, people just tired and they just lost the taste of life.
But it also breeds a different mentality in the people when that's what you do. It's interesting how that changes people and how that cultural difference between, say, Russians and the West. The West will never understand Russia ever. There's an enormous disconnect psychologically between the two people. I'm in awe of Michael, who I followed him a little bit, and I thought I actually didn't believe he was anything to do with AGV sport. I thought there's no way a bloke that high up in motorcycling would. What's he doing? And here he is in the fucking Ukraine on a motorcycle in the middle of a war. Are you shitting me, dude? Really? And he went back. He didn't just do it once. He did it again. Right?
3 times.
Yeah.
3 times.
And after that, he told me that I'm crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, and he says, you're crazy because you ride on the edge of dams. And dude, you're in a war, right? They're shooting each other, right? It's serious.
Yeah. I didn't believe the media, and I believed right from the beginning. An errant missile could hit you. An airplane could fall on your head. A comet could hit you. Sure. I understood when I came from Thailand that if you didn't get in between the two armies, this was not a conventional war where random cities were being firebombed like Dresden or Hiroshima, that if you weren't in between the Russian separatists and the Ukrainian army or the Azov battalion, that you weren't having a problem. That, the city, Lviv and Kiev, these cities look completely normal to me. So that, to me, the danger issue was the danger issue that we all know. It was being hit by a car, by a drunk driver. The Ukrainian, to me, it's one of the most dangerous places to ride a motorcycle. They're not used to motorcycles. They don't look for them. They drive aggressively. They drive while they're drunk. And having a close call that way, you have 100 times greater chance, 1,000 times greater chance of being killed in a motorcycle accident than being killed having anything to do with the war.
And I absolutely agree with you, but from a Western mentality perspective, to get on a motorcycle and go to the front lines, you were in Bucha, you were in you're there. There's bullet holes, there's tanks, there's all kinds of shit going on. Very, very few people, Western or anyone else, would actually do that. And why I acknowledge what you're saying is absolutely true. I'm still in awe of that happening. I'd love to do it.
And that goes back to the part we're talking about some of the similarities of our personality, is that regardless of whatever view I might have on a particular subject, that someone might say, on this area you're right or left or conservative or liberal or whatever, what I am consistently is skeptical and anti-authoritarian. So I wanted to go initially for two reasons. One, to help people I knew that were trying to get out. And two, to see for myself, because I didn't believe anything that the media was saying, especially after 4 years of hearing that Trump and Putin rigged the election against Hillary Clinton. And I went to Russia and visited Denis right after. He came to D.C. weeks after Trump was elected, and we went to the Women's March. Denis and I and a Chinese intern marched for 8 hours with 400,000 angry lesbians. It was an unbelievable experience. And then 2 months later, I went to Russia. So it was in Russia right after Trump had just been a president for a few weeks. And it was so fascinating to talk to people. And I talked to you about the billboards in the St. Petersburg airport that were just making fun of, lose an election, blame it on us, just the way they were able to have a great
I absolutely agree with you in terms of the narrative, the propaganda that we're fed. And my awakening came during the NATO bombing of Yugoslavia, right? And there was a whole thing going on there where I remember, I'll never forget the footage that I saw. This was the BBC was running this footage. And you would think the BBC, the bastion of objective journalism, there's a bus full of people. And the BBC is telling its viewers that the people on the bus are Albanian refugees running from Serbian terror groups. But I speak Serbian. The people on the bus are Serbs running from KLA guerrillas who were, shooting them and killing them and chasing them out of villages. And the subtitles have nothing to do with what the people on the bus are saying. And I started yelling at the television. My wife's coming, what are you yelling at the TV? I said, look at this bullshit. This is a lie. Everything they said about that war was a lie. Everything.
The BBC puts on the news what MI6 tells them to.
Yeah, the Washington Post runs whatever, the CIA to run.
All of the major media are all
like that. And it's gobsmacking that like we're being fed this bullshit about what's happening in the Ukraine now. It's the same bullshit we were fed. That was a rehearsal for, the Balkans was a rehearsal for what we're being fed now. Can we bomb a sovereign country under the guise of humanitarian bombing completely? There was no UN security resolution. The Serbs are standing on bridges going, fucking fuck you, bomb us, shoot us. And when Joe Biden pulled out of Afghanistan in that incredible way that he did, where he left $80 billion of weapons there, there were, I think most Americans had the idea of, wow, finally we're out of here. Maybe we can have some peace at last, not be wasting all the money. I never thought that. Now, I wasn't thinking the Ukraine war would start 6 months later, but I absolutely believe that Afghan was just a pause, that they would never, there was going to be another one. They have to. They have a lot of money to make. They need it. They need it.
It was going to be something.
Iraq, Yemen, Libya. This has been going on since You know, since you talk to the Americans won World War II, and it had nothing to do with Russia. We won, right?
Well,
That's it.
Korea was a draw.
A draw. Vietnam was a loss.
In Vietnam. Okay, no matter how you want to paint that, that's a loss.
Yeah. And you won in Grenada, though. Grenada.
Yeah, there was like 17 Marxist
soldiers
there. We won in Grenada.
Yeah,
but
Grenada,
Reagan, that was Reagan. But Reagan, 260, 70 Marines got killed in that blast in Beirut. If that was any other president, that would have been, another war right there. Reagan pulled them all out, sucked it in. That was terrible loss. But if that was Biden, I think even any president since Reagan, that would have been a war with that.
Yeah, 100%.
Reagan was smart enough. So he had Grenada, which was just a show bullshit. And we got Noriega out of Panama, which was sort of like a military coup more than a war. But all the Somalia and in Yemen and most Americans don't even know what's going on in Yemen. What a nightmare that is. And Syria and Afghanistan and Iraq and Libya and now Ukraine. It's just endless. It never ends.
It never ends. And the cost in human life, the cost to the world economy, just to maintain the hegemony of the world, it really,
It didn't maintain Ukraine. The war in Ukraine just accelerated probably by 20 years the advance of the new multipolar world.
Yeah.
The U.S. probably could have held on at least another decade. Ukraine ended that. I mean, they've rocketed bricks into the stratosphere. 80% of the world is completely not, even though the media says that, the whole world is aghast at what's happening and they are really upset with Russia and they view Putin as the new Hitler. That's not the case. 75-80% of the world is absolutely either behind Russia or neutral. But no one sees the United States as the great peacemaker. They see the U.S. as meddling. And if they don't see the U.S. as starting the war or instigating war, they see the U.S. as taking advantage of the war to deal with Russia. So
prolonging it.
Has not gained. Individual people have made a ton of money, but as a country, we have come down many pegs in position, and the economy the debt is 33 trillion. I don't know what the gross domestic product of Australia is, but the United States debt is $33 trillion. How many years gross domestic economy of Australia is that?
Oh, you could buy us all for a tenth of that, I would think.
Maybe 100th. It's
maybe
unimaginable. They say that every American taxpayer, if you divide that up, owes more than $250,000 in unpaid debt for all this money that the government has spent that doesn't exist, that they've all borrowed basically from the Chinese, who are our next enemy after we give up on the Russia-Ukraine thing.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's where can this possibly end? And I think during the Cold War, we had a bipolar world, right? There was the Soviet Union, there was America, and everything just kind of sat in stasis. No one wanted to do anything. And then with the collapse of the Soviet Union, America gone, well, we fucking won. Let's do whatever we want. And off they went. And now we have a tripolar world where we have China, Russia, which is the smallest economy of the three. But it's Russia. You can't discount Russia. It's not going to go away.
I think it's more than. I think that it's more than that. I think that India is a huge upcoming. I think you look at Africa as a bloc, not as an individual country, and South Americans in Brazil is such a powerhouse, and people are saying, we have our own interests that are different from everyone else's interests.
I mean, in terms of being able to project military strength.
Yeah.
So that leaves America, Russia.
Well, right now it seems like Russia, I mean, on paper, the U.S. is number one. But if you look at the results of the Ukraine war, we've got a lot of really high-tech, neat video game stuff that in real life doesn't seem to work that well.
No, artillery.
The Russian stuff maybe isn't so high-tech, but it's very reliable and works 365 days a year. And it's tried and true. So
all the time. So that's what it is. But so just to go back to Denis, because I'm still fascinated about a Russian guy, a Russian stunt rider running tours around the world. Do you do any stuff in Russia?
Yeah, we have a motorcycle school in Kaliningrad, and we are making motorcycle tours in Russia. Also, the
So
place.
where do you go if I wanted to go and say, all right, I'm going to fly to Moscow,
Mhm.
and I contact your company and I say, what kind of bike are you going to give me? Is it a BMW
Uh,
or a Yamaha?
so first of all, we will receive your riding skills. We will request your riding skills, and after that, according
Face
to that,
control.
yeah, yeah. Today we called it face control.
Yep.
And according to that, we can provide you some programs for the next year. For example, we have interesting program again in Kamchatka. It's 4 days of riding, like volcano riding and so on. Beautiful nature, and we
Yeah.
provide their new motorcycles, KTM 300s, two-stroke
Wow.
motorcycles.
Yeah.
KTM 300, gas 300, and beta. How to pronounce?
Beta.
Yeah,
Beta. We don't have betas here. We have
300.
gas and KDM. So you ride
Yeah.
Kamchatka Peninsula,
Yeah.
and because one of my always wanted to go and see Russia and see. There's so much to see. You couldn't see it all in a week or 2 weeks. You need several years to see all of Russia. But do you do the Ural Mountains? Lake Baikal, places like that, the traditional sort of things.
In the closest future, we will make a tour in Baikal. Maybe not next year. Next year, we have a plan to make a Kamchatka and Vladivostok. So one of our tours customer, he launched enduro company in Vladivostok, and he invited us as a special guest for different workshops and so on. And next year, Vladivostok, that would be interesting because we are from the west part of Russia, and now we are west. West will go to the east. So Vladivostok, it's very interesting.
How big are the groups?
It depends from the program. If we are talking about some kind of medium level or advanced riders, it's no more than 6 or 7. If we are talking some like country cross style of tour, it's up to 12, 14 and so on. So we just bring more instructors and we will provide a cool tour.
It sounds great. I mean, and I think that's hugely needed, especially with places like Russia. There are people out there who go on tours and they want nice hotels, nice easy 100 kilometers a day kind of things, restaurants and stuff like that. But then there's you guys come out. We're going to fight a bear. We're going to drink vodka with it next to a campfire. That kind of shit. That's great.
Yeah, some wild.
We'll have to send you a link to this video he made of his Himalaya tour because you really get an idea of the accommodations, and you can see how cold it is just by the jackets and how just it looks like everyone's shivering. It's very hardcore, but it's incredible.
Yeah, no, I'd love it. I will absolutely push it on my socials as well. Go and do these bitches because I've got a lot of blokes on my timeline who are hardcore riders. They think they're hardcore riders, and they do a lot of desert racing and stuff like that. But I would love to get them over there and go and ride Kamchatka, go and ride the Road of Bones, go and see something really difficult. There's a fabulous video. I've done a bit of work with Ural sidecars here, Ural, and I always show the video. There's this great video of a river in Russia, and it's a big wide river and it's flowing very quickly. And you think you can't even. They're riding the Ural sidecars through this river, and it's like the water is almost a meter deep, and it's fast flowing. And people going, you can't ride. Yeah, you can. Watch this. Straight through. Fantastic. It's great.
Yeah, there's a scene in that Tibet movie where they're high up and there's a rushing torrent river. It looks absolutely impossible to cross. Looks like you'd be swept away and drowned. And it's dusk. It's going to be dark soon. And they ride across it. And you can't see anything because the water's so fast flowing and it's a little muddy because of the disturbance. But you can see the bikes go like that, and all of a sudden they sort of kick up because apparently like halfway through there's a big fucking boulder underneath there because each bike hits it and almost falls when it hits it. Yeah. And it's like, I think, what a nightmare. I can't imagine you're up in 5,000 meters up, the water's ice cold, and you dump your bike over, and it's washed 3 kilometers down the river.
But that's the thing. That's what bonds people together, the shared experience, the able to conquer something, to beat the odds, to get to where, to do that volcano thing. I think it's fantastic. Absolutely.
I had a lot more respect for Royal Enfield after I watched that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. If I was going to ride the Himalayas, it would be on a Royal Enfield because every villager can fix it.
Yeah, exactly.
That's it. Can you imagine taking a Ducati Multistrada?
No. I saw their Ducati. I saw their one guy. He was traveling from New Delhi to Tibet, and he was used Ducati Multistrada, and it's impossible if something happened, like a chain or some small
anything,
like a clutch or something like that.
Yeah,
you're.
Or any electrical problem, any tiny little electrical problem, and it's all over.
Yeah. Can you imagine how to explain at some local village that you have a trouble with your Ducati?
ECU. Yeah, the ECU's not working.
Yeah. So
you explain that to someone while these goats are running around.
No, look, Denis, it was an absolute honor and a pleasure, to meet you. And I wish you every success. I really, really do.
Have a great day, Boris, and we'll talk to you soon.
It was lovely to talk to you both. All right, take care, guys.